The Wild Card Weekend preview of the Bears Talk Underground is brought to you by MyBookie. The playoffs are here, guys, and luckily our beloved are in attendance for a change instead of being at home watching it along with everybody else. And if you're an expert or a rookie, you should be betting at MyBookie. If you're the kind of guy that likes to bet a little and win a lot, like playing numbers on roulette, you can create a big parlay, pick 3 games to win, and if you hit all 3, you could turn 100 into 600. And so much to bet on. You got the college football playoff championship next weekend, or next Monday, I should say. College basketball, NBA, NHL, esports, and, of course, our beloved Chicago Bears taking on the Eagles and the other 3 wildcard games this weekend. There's plenty for you to sink your teeth into on MyBookie. I recommend these guys because I trust them. They've been in business for years. They've got great online reviews, and their mobile site is so easy to use. Sign up this week, and MyBookie will give you a 50% deposit bonus to jumpstart your bankroll. Also, make sure to follow at BetMyBookie on Twitter. They personally respond to every mention in DM, not to mention that they've given away more than $10,000 in free money to their followers this football season. Don't miss out on one of the best weeks to bet on sports this year. Log on to MyBookie right now and use the promo code BEARS25 to get your 50% deposit bonus. That's promo code BEARS25. MyBookie. You play, you win, you get paid. Now let's talk about these playoffs. This week on the Bears Talk Underground. In the past, when the calendar turned to a new year, the Bears were looking ahead to the offseason, free agency, and the draft. But instead, as 2018 turns to 2019, our beloved are gearing up for their first postseason run since 2010 by welcoming the defending champion Eagles to Soldier Field on Sunday. Can the Bears keep this run going, or will the champs end it for us? Matt Martelluci of the Armchair Bird Gang joins us on the Wild Card Round preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground. It's Wild Card Weekend, and our beloved Chicago Bears are going to be a part of it because, as I said, for the first time since 2010, the Bears are in the playoffs. What's going on, everybody? Larry D back for the Wild Card Weekend preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground. This is only the second time in the history of the Bears Talk Underground / Chicago Bears review that we have postseason games to talk about that the Bears are actually involved in. I mean, usually at this point, we're reviewing the year. We're doing the year in review episode the week after the week 17, not talking about a postseason run that the Bears have a very good chance of going deep into. So, but in order to go deep, we got to get past the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday at Soldier Field. Matt Martelluci of the Armchair All-Americans, my new network, will be joining us here in a little bit to help us preview this game. Matt is part of the Armchair Bird Gang that writes about the Philadelphia Eagles. Don't have a podcast yet for the Eagles, but he's the writer for the Philadelphia page, kind of like SB Nation has one for every team. He represents the Eagles for Armchair, just like I represent the Bears for Armchair, but I do it with my podcast and the spoken word instead of the written one. So, but we'll have him on here in a few minutes to talk about the game. A roller coaster year. We kind of chronicle the season because it has been, this was supposed to be a team that was supposed to basically pick up where it left off, even though it left off with a world championship last year. They had very little, roster turnover. Everybody was coming back. Carson Wentz was going to be healthy early in the year, and if not at the start of it. And even if they didn't get Carson Wentz to start, they had Nick Foles, who's the reigning MVP, the reigning Super Bowl MVP. So everything was going to be fine. They were going to get some guys healthy. Jason Peters is going to come back after missing like the second half of the year, I believe with an ACL injury as well. Everything, and one of the better defenses in football. And instead, they started off 2-3, went all the way to 4-6. They had the disastrous blowout loss, 48-7 to New Orleans, on the road. And that's where basically everyone's like, all right, well, we can forget about the Eagles doing anything this year. I mean, that's the best team in the NFL, and they were nowhere near. Like, they didn't even deserve to share the field with the Saints that day. And somehow they fought and clawed and scratched their way to winning 5 out of their last 6 to get themselves in a position they had to do what they had to do and then get a little help from yours truly, the beloved Chicago Bears, to earn that playoff berth. So it was a crazy up and down year. We kind of chronicle the season and then talk about what we expect to see this Sunday. So before we get to that, we got a bunch of things to get to real quick. I mean, most importantly, let's just go ahead and talk about it right now. The injury report for both teams. This is the most names I've seen on a Bear injury report this year. That is good and bad all at the same time. The good news, however, is that most of the names on this list have been full participants this week in practice. Taylor Gabriel left the game on Sunday against the Vikings with a rib injury. He has been full participation both on Wednesday and Thursday. Kyle Long was full participation on Wednesday, got a veteran day off today, so he didn't practice, but he's good to go. Anthony Miller with his shoulder injury has been full participation this week, as has been Allen Robinson with the rib injury that kept him out of the game against Minnesota, full participation Wednesday and Thursday. Now, the two big names that we want to know about, the ones that have missed the last two games against the 49ers and Vikings, Eddie Jackson, Aaron Lynch. Neither of them practiced on Wednesday. Aaron Lynch is nursing that elbow injury. Eddie Jackson with the ankle injury. Thank you very much, Soldier Field Turf. But Thursday, some light at the end of the tunnel for Eddie Jackson. He was limited on Thursday. So went out there, did some things, participated a bit in practice. Aaron Lynch, on the other hand, still hasn't been out to practice yet. So tomorrow's going to be a big day for both guys. Will Aaron Lynch be limited and then questionable, probable, whatever for Sunday's game? And more importantly, Eddie Jackson. We're going to need Eddie on Sunday because the Eagles like to throw the ball downfield, and Eddie Jackson's one of the best center fielders in football. So especially with Alshon coming to town on Sunday and the deep balls, the 50-50s that he's so good at catching, we're going to need a guy like Eddie Jackson out there to help Kyle and Prince on the back end. So hopefully he'll be good to go on Friday, and he'll practice again, and then hopefully he'll be listed as something other than doubtful, because if it's doubtful, it's 75% chance that he won't play on Sunday. Now, guys who have been listed as doubtful have played before, but I want to see questionable. I want to see probable for Eddie Jackson. I don't want to see doubtful after practice tomorrow. And Aaron Lynch, I want to see Aaron Lynch out there, absolutely, but we can survive a lot better without Aaron Lynch than we can without Eddie Jackson, especially against this opponent on Sunday. So hopefully Aaron Lynch can play, but I think we'll be okay without him. Eddie Jackson, on the other hand, would make for a very difficult Sunday, I think. I think we'll still win, but I think things could get interesting, and all due respect to Deion Bush, he's not Eddie Jackson. So hopefully Eddie can play on Sunday, even if he's at 85 or 90%. I think that will be plenty good enough for him to play on Sunday. The Eagles, on the other hand, lots of names on their list. Michael Bennett, brother of former Bear Martellus Bennett, has been out this week with a foot injury, has not practiced yet this week. Fletcher Cox, somebody that will be somebody we want to focus on heavily this coming Sunday, has been limited with a knee injury. Nick Foles, who Matt and I talk about quite a bit during the show, limited with those rib injuries, and it's on his throwing side too, so that could make things very interesting on Sunday if we can get our hands on him. That can definitely change the game for sure. Was limited on Wednesday, full participation on Thursday, so he's good to go for Sunday. Cornerback Sidney Jones has not practiced yet this week with a hamstring injury. Jason Kelsey, their starting center, the guy that had like the crazy costume for their celebration when they won the Super Bowl last year. He had some some crazy 70s pimp outfit on or something like that when he was out there making his speech during the Super Bowl celebration. Limited on Wednesday, full go with a knee injury on Thursday, so he's good to go. Jason Peters, who I mentioned a moment ago, nursing a quadricep injury. He's been limited this week. Wendell Smallwood, running back that Matt and I talk about, limited today with a hand injury, was not on the injury list yesterday on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens there. And then Mike Wallace, wide receiver, limited with an ankle injury. And Carson Wentz has not been officially shipped off to injured reserve, is no participation whatsoever with that back injury that's kept him out of the lineup the last several weeks. So that's a lot of big names on that team, but I think they're mostly just banged up as opposed to not being, they're hurt. They're not injured. You know what I'm saying? So for anyone who's seen the program, one of the greatest football movies of all time. So there you have it with the injuries, and that's plenty of time devoted to that because we're banged up more this week than we have been all season long. So that's a great thing and a bad thing all at the same time. But like I said at the top of the segment, most of the guys on the list are full participation and will be good to go on Sunday. Just want to keep your eyes on the status of Eddie Jackson after practice tomorrow and what designation the Bears give him going into the weekend. The one that we don't want to see is doubtful. We don't want to see doubtful for Eddie Jackson. We want questionable. That's the worst that we want. That's 50-50. Questionable is 50-50. So that's what we want to see for Eddie Jackson so we can have some hope going into the weekend. A couple more things before we get to my talk with Matt. Mitch Trubisky listed by Bleacher Report as the biggest concern for the Bears heading into this playoff run. They listed what's the biggest concern for all 12 teams made it to the postseason. For the Chiefs, it was their defense. For the Eagles, it was their running game or something like that. For the Bears, actually, I think it was Nick Foles. I think they talked about it being Nick Foles. For the Rams, it was Jared Goff. I mean, the last, they started 12-1. And then the Bears, kind of brought him down to reality. He looked really bad against Chicago. Did not look much better against the Eagles a week later, also on Sunday Night Football, and kind of looking like somebody whose cage can be rattled if you can get to him. He can start making some silly throws, some bad decisions, that kind of thing. So he's a big concern for the Rams. Ends up being the quarterback for us as well for the Chicago Bears. It's not untrue. I'd say that Mitch has been a lot more stable the last few weeks of the season. Even though he's not lighting up the stat board, he only had 163 yards passing against the Giants this past Sunday, not the Giants, the Vikings this past Sunday. Had about 240, 230, something like that against the 49ers on that 25 of 29 day. It's been much better since that Rams game, despite the 3 turnovers and the 110 yards. He's been a lot more efficient, hasn't thrown an interception in the last few weeks, and his quarterback rating is very good. So I think he's more stable coming into the postseason on a upswing, if you will. Playing mistake-free football. And with our defense, that's all we need out of Mitch. We don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes and throw 50 touchdown passes for us. We don't need him to be Lamar Jackson and run for $150 on top of another 200 yards and a touchdown or anything like that. We don't need to lean on Mitch the way that those other teams need to lean on their quarterbacks, the way that Philly is going to need to lean on Nick Foles, the way that the Chargers are going to lean on Phillip Rivers and things like that. It's a much better situation for Mitch to be in right now when we have the best defense. We're playing a home game. There's not a lot of pressure on Mitch. If anything, the pressure is on our defense to show up once again. There's no real pressure on Mitch, to be honest with you. I mean, if any pressure that Mitch feels will be pressure that he's putting on himself, and that's the mental game. That's the self-imposed guilt, pressure, whatever you want to call it. So that's going to be on Dave Ragone, our quarterbacks coach, Helfrich, our OC, and of course Matt Nagy, the head coach himself, to keep Matt. I keep wanting to say Matt because I've just said Matt for the last hour straight. Mitch Trubisky, to keep him focused, keep his mind right, keep him confident. Not that he's mentally weak or anything like that, but keeping him in the right frame of mind going into this all-important game on Sunday, making sure that he keeps focus where it needs to be, as opposed to trying to guilt himself into some kind of, trying to force things like he was in that Rams game. He's been a lot more under control since he came in. It was his first game back after injury, huge game, national stage, home game, best team in football, so on and so forth. And he pressed. He doesn't need to press, and I think he's been figuring that out the last 3 weeks of the season. You know, he outplayed Aaron Rodgers when we beat the Packers a few weeks ago. Did everything that we needed him to do against San Francisco, even though he didn't have to throw the ball, you know, farther downfield and, you know, the 15 to 20 yard routes, because he took what the 49ers were giving him, which was the short passing game, and we turned those into big plays. And then last week, only 163 yards passing, but he made every single yard count, and that one touchdown drive in the fourth quarter that pretty much sealed the game for the Bears, that 16-play, 75-yard drive that was over 9 minutes long, that was the dagger for the Bears, and Mitch was perfect on that drive, had a lot of key third down throws, extending the drive, moving the chains, keeping the momentum with the Bears. If he can do that 2 or 3 times against the Eagles, we'll win this game easily on Sunday. We don't need Mitch to do much, and that's the beauty of where the team is at right now. We don't need the team to do much, and the other beautiful thing about our offense is that, granted, we paid Allen Robinson $14 million a year to be the number one receiver, but we're spreading the ball around every single week, and that's something that's been talked about quite a bit. I'll talk more about that after the Matt Martelluci interview when we kind of make my picks and my assessment of the football game. But that's something that's worked out really, really well this year, despite paying Allen Robinson number one wide receiver money. We haven't really needed him to be a number one receiver because we have all this other talent. A couple other things. Khalil Mack, number 2 overall in jersey sales, according to NFLShop.com, number 2 behind Tom Brady, the only player ahead of Mack in jersey sales, and Khalil Mack, the only defensive player in the top 10. It's all, you know, Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, your usual suspects as far as offensive players. Khalil Mack at number 2, and only Tom Brady ahead of him. So that's not bad. He was number 18, it said in the article, 18 overall last year, climbed up to number 2, wreaking havoc for our beloved Chicago Bears. And then finally, I don't know why he did it. It's bulletin board material, you know, at best. And Matt and I talk about it for a bit, but Alshon Jeffrey, not necessarily known as being the sharpest knife in the drawer, when was asked by the press on earlier this week about returning to Chicago, how did he feel about it? And, you know, I know you have some love for the city of Chicago. And he's like, man, I love the city of Philadelphia. Chicago was just where I used to work. Really, dude? Really? Just that's all you have to say about Chicago? Now, I don't know if that's some kind of animosity between, you know, because he didn't necessarily leave Chicago on the best terms. Maybe it was an odds with Ryan Pace and, you know, what Ryan Pace was offering to bring him back. And, you know, because I do believe the Bears did want him to come back last year in 2017. God knows we all wanted him to after, you know, we made the moves that we didn't make in the offseason last year. As a matter of fact, not signing Alshon was the reason I didn't want the Bears to draft a quarterback last year. It was like, we have no one for the quarterback to throw to. Do not draft a quarterback. It'll be a disastrous year for the kid. We could ruin him. That was the one thing. It was like, and then we've set the franchise back even further by drafting the quarterback. Of course, Ryan Pace, that's why he's the GM and I'm not. He went ahead and drafted Trubisky and it's worked out just fine. But, you know, maybe that's what happened. Maybe he's got a little animosity, not necessarily towards Chicago, because he did later on take it back. He did. I think he either tweeted or he posted something on Instagram about, yes, he did love the city of Chicago and the fans and blah, blah, blah. I think his beef is more with the front office than maybe even so the organization or anything like that. So, but nonetheless, you know, there's enough storyline going into this thing. The Bears show up every single week, which has been my favorite thing about this team this year, is that we come ready to play. How many times over the years, especially during the Fox and Trestman years, have you heard me say in knee-jerk reactions, we don't look like we're ready to play, we come out flat, we're playing catch-up, blah, blah, blah. I have not said that once this year. Actually, maybe I just said it once this year. That game against Arizona, that disastrous start we got into in the first quarter where they jumped out ahead 14-0 right off the bat. That's the only time I've ever really seen the Bears come out flat or quote-unquote not ready to play. But in the other 15 games, we've come out kicking ass in the first half. I mean, I think the Arizona game's the only one we didn't lead at halftime this year. Maybe the Patriots game or something like that. But for the most part, the Bears have led almost every game this year at halftime, which means we come ready to play in the first half. So, when we've got a team like that, you're going to throw fuel on the fire? Not exactly the best idea. So we'll see how that all handles itself on Sunday when Alshon comes to town in the wrong color uniform with the Eagles. So I think that's going to – oh, no, wait. One more thing. I was debating on whether I should save this for the end of the show. I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. This has nothing to do with football, just me wanting to pay tribute to somebody who was a big part of my childhood. I was a big wrestling fan as a kid. Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning, watching Wrestling Challenge or any of the other Saturday morning wrestling shows for the WWF at the time. Mean Gene Okerlund passed away yesterday. As a matter of fact, he was 76 years old. I can hear his head. He's the soundtrack to my childhood when it came to World Wrestling Federation events. And, of course, Hulk Hogan starting every interview. Let me tell you something, Mean Gene, every single time, whether it be one of those promos that they would cut to promote a local show, those little interviews they used to do in the back. And, every Saturday night's main event, he talked to everybody before they went out and hit the arena and everything. Mean Gene was all over that, even though he switched sides in the mid-'90s and went to WCW. But he did come back home to the WWF before the end of his career, and just one of the more iconic people. Announcer, an interviewer, a ring. Not even so much a play-by-play guy. He just interviewed the wrestlers and helped put them over and make them household names. One of my favorite things about the Macho Man box set that I have, because the Macho Man, if it wasn't Hulk Hogan, it was the Macho Man. Those were my guys. But one of my favorite things about the Macho Man box set is that, like, one of the discs is extra features, and it's nothing but interviews between Mean Gene and the Macho Man Randy Savage. That I could watch that thing over and over again. It was one of my favorite things about buying that box set. Just love that to death. But Mean Gene was a big part of that, and watching all those interviews that he did, even though it was like commercial time, there are no matches or anything like that, watching him talk to those wrestlers and help bring out their personality and make them household names in those late 80s with the WWF, and then, playing his part with WCW and the NWO back in the day and everything else. It was, I posted on Facebook when I basically put it out there, me sharing it, not that I'm breaking the news or anything like that, but when I shared it on my timeline on Facebook, the caption I put on it was 2019, I'm already not a fan. So you take one of my favorite people, one of my childhood icons, and Mean Gene Okerlund, me in 2019 aren't speaking right now. So anyway, rest in peace, Mean Gene. And I'm sure I got plenty of wrestling fans listening to this, throwing up for Mean Gene when you hit your knees tonight. So anyway, that's going to do it for the news and notes. We're going to bring on Matt Martelluci from the Armchair Bird Gang to help us preview the wild card matchup between our beloved Chicago Bears and the defending world champion Philadelphia Eagles. For our first trip back to the postseason since 2010, our beloved are hosting a wild card game, but of course we have to take on the defending world champion Philadelphia Eagles in order to do it. And here to help us out, our very first crossover Armchair episode from the Armchair Bird Gang, my fellow Armchair brethren, Matt Martelluci. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Larry. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be on the show.
And so, since you're new to our show, and when we have new friends on the show, we're going to call you a friend for now, Matt. We'll see how that goes by the end of the conversation.
I was your friend last week.
Well, yeah, for sure. You sure, absolutely. So, But that's right. You love us right now, so that's for sure.
It's a very weird dynamic I have going on.
Yeah,
right
there's
now.
a lot of like viral clips. Let's go Bears. Let's go Bears. Like, wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, you're welcome then. So anyway, we like to ask the new friends on the show the same questions, just kind of a getting to know you thing. Where are you from originally? Where are you now, if that's different? And then, of course, what is your favorite memory as an Eagles fan? And I'm not going to let you cheat and pick last year's Super Bowl, so you got to pick another one.
That is burned into my memory right now. So I'm from Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, which is about 45, 50 minutes outside of Philadelphia. And then I moved into Philadelphia around 2014, currently living here now.
Okay.
And my favorite memory was actually my first ever Eagles game with my dad. It was the playoff game against Michael Vick, where Brian Dawkins actually knocked him out of the game when he scored on a touchdown. And I don't think I've ever heard a wider variety of curse words and attacks at the other players in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I kind of fell in love with the Eagles during that moment.
Was that the 04 championship game?
No. This was a wild card game.
It was a wild card game. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because you guys actually beat the Falcons to go to Super Bowl 39 against the against the Pats.
Against Patriots.
Lost that one.
Yep, that was not a good day for me.
Yeah, the vomit game, the famous vomit game. So
yeah.
So, all right. Well, as I said before, you're welcome. Welcome to the postseason. You guys did the work you needed to do, winning 6 out of your last 7 to make the playoffs. The only thing that bothers me about people calling you guys the hottest team in the NFL right now is that the Bears are into the postseason, winning 9 of their last 10. So, but that's just my own bias right there. We started 3-3, finished 12-4. I think that's a hotter streak than 6 out of 7, but that's just me. But I'm not here to be combative, I promise.
I was about to say the one team I did not want to see in the playoffs was the Bears.
And
so,
that's funny because that's literally the only way you were getting in. So, I mean, that's it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And trust me, on this side of the ledge, there was also a lot of talk about, should we let the Vikings win because we know we can beat them? Do we want to play the Eagles in the postseason? There was that kind of talk. Ultimately, it's like, well, the game is going to be at home. We're pretty much, unbeatable at home. We've only lost one contest early in the season, at Soldier Field. And, we played the Rams and beat them up pretty good. Anyone that's come to Soldier Field, aside from that first loss to the Patriots, has gone very, very well for the Bears. But it's like, if you had to choose between Minnesota and Philadelphia, believe me, the votes were heavy on the Minnesota side. We wanted the Vikings coming to town instead of the Eagles, just in case that whole hottest team in the NFL thing did carry over into this weekend. So, the feeling is mutual. You didn't want to see us in the postseason. We didn't really want to see you, but the stars aligned, and it's going to happen this weekend. So there you have it.
Is.
So let's talk about your team, man. You guys did win 6 out of 7, but I'm more interested in talking about how the year started for you guys with the you got the annual let's raise the banner win on Thursday night against the Falcons, and then lost 3 out of the last 4 after that, including the Tampa Bay. You beat Indianapolis in Carson Wentz's first game back, and then you lose 2 straight, one at Tennessee, and then the second one at home against the Vikings. Let's talk about that first quarter of the season. What happened there? I mean, because Nick Foles didn't really come out of the gates like he finished the season. He didn't start it the same way. So Wentz comes in, you get a win over the Colts, and then you lose 2 straight after that.
Yeah, so coming in, Nick Foles, I mean, after that Super Bowl run, expectations were through the roof for his performance.
Right.
So I think fans were a little bit disappointed in what they saw, but I think they were more disappointed in our defense, because last year the defense is really what carried us, I would say. And in particular, in the first quarter of the season, Jim Schwartz's play calling was atrocious. Specifically in the Titans game, we were up almost the whole game, dominating, and they come back and beat us. And there's one play that stands out in my mind. It was a 4th and something, 4th and long, and Rodney, not Rodney McLeod, sorry, Corey Graham is sitting back at the line at the first down marker and won't come off his spot to guard the guy a yard in front of him, and he dives for the first down. And it was just those little subtleties that Jim Schwartz just would not change in his defensive scheme that drove me crazy for the first half of the season. I think what cost us a lot of key games.
Well, yeah, you come back a week later, you beat the Giants on the road. It seemed like you had a lot of trouble winning games at home. Weren't you guys unbeaten at home last year?
Yeah, that was actually a shocker this year. At home, the defense always said that they fed off the crowd's energy. They always played better. But they honestly gave up probably more points at home than they did on the road. I don't have the stats in front of me, but
yeah, because you win that game on the road at the Giants. You lost that tight one to Minnesota the week before. On a short week, you beat the Giants on Thursday Night Football, and then after some rest, you come home and you blow a fourth quarter lead against the Panthers, and that's where I think things really started. Like, people started to sour on the Eagles, or at least like maybe it's a Super Bowl hangover thing. It happens all the time, so you guys didn't appear to be immune from that. But to see the Eagles losing at home when they were so dominant a year ago, it would be like, unfortunately, like if this happens to the Bears in 2019, if we come back to Chicago and we can't win a game in Soldier Field after we went 7-1 this past season, it would be shocking to fans to see the Bears losing at home. More than they're winning at this point, because you're the first 8 games of the season you've lost 2-3 home games.
Right. And I think the play that I was talking about earlier, the 4th down play, was against the Panthers, because Rodney McLeod was injured and Corey Graham had to be signed during the season to replace him, as our secondary was completely decimated throughout the season. But I think the biggest loss at home that really stung the most for Eagles fans, where people started to turn, was that loss to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
That was one of the most hyped games I think I've been in for the city, obviously besides the Super Bowl and all that. But just that was an absolute heartbreaker. Just giving up 14 in the fourth quarter, not being able to stop them, and that was, I think, the pinnacle of Jim Schwartz's just poorest play calling late in games, where he would just have play prevent defense, let them drive down the field, and have opportunity to score late in the game.
And you're talking about the one at home, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they dropped that one 27 to 20, and then basically the week after that at New Orleans, losing 48-7. That's where most people started writing off the Eagles, like they're done. They're 4-6. I think you guys were 4-6 at the time. This is it. They're done. I mean, it's the Super Bowl hangover thing. It's just not going to be their year. They've gotten beaten up in the secondary and got beat up 10 times more, giving up 48 to the Saints, and had to score late to avoid a shutout and everything like that. That's where everybody kind of closed the book on the Eagles at that point, and everyone was looking at the Rams, the Saints, the Bears, and such as the contenders, in the NFC, because the champs were done.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't that we just got beat; we got absolutely slaughtered by the Saints, and that was sort of a benchmark game, because, as you said, the Saints and the Rams were the top dogs in the NFC. So to kind of test our playoff strength, we needed to show up against that Saints team, and it was just a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it was not pretty, and a lot of questions about how Carson Wentz playing into the fourth quarter when you're down 40 points, and just a lot of scrutiny about the team and what they were doing at that point in the season. Like the golden touch that Doug Peterson had a year ago just wasn't working anymore.
Definitely. I think then that's when the conversation was brought up about Frank Wright's presence really being felt. Just having him on the sideline, kind of helping Dougie out with some situations, maybe that he wasn't comfortable with running, maybe giving him some different looks. I think people started really realizing that Frank Wright was a vital component to the team. Sure.
I mean, but you bounce back from that win, or loss, excuse me, with 2 wins over the Giants and the Redskins, and not that big a surprise to most people. The Giants, not a very good football team this year. The Redskins had lost Alex Smith at that point and were struggling to, or was that the game that he got hurt?
No, so that was the game Colt McCoy got hurt.
Okay, all right.
And
so
Mark Sanchez had to come in the game.
Mark Sanchez. Oh, man.
And I have very fond memories of Mark Sanchez as the Eagles quarterback.
I bet you do. But then, the shine on making it back to 500 is knocked off on Thanksgiving Day. Hell of a football game between you guys and the Eagles. That was Thanksgiving Day. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't Thanksgiving, was it?
It was
It was a Sunday game.
No, it was not Thanksgiving. Yeah,
it was a Sunday game. I'm looking at it right here. So, but it was overtime game, 29-23. That crazy play to Amari Cooper. The defender makes the play and somehow tips it up in the air just well enough for Cooper to grab it and run it in for the touchdown. That defender, who I don't know who it was, I'm sure you'll tell me, but that guy wanted to shoot himself after that play. Like, he literally was broken after Amari Cooper caught that touchdown pass.
Yeah, Russell Douglas. He's had an up and down year. He's a third-year cornerback out of West Virginia. But over the past couple games, he's been playing very, very well.
So, but it's like, you lose that game at Dallas, and that was kind of like your shot to come back. You're back to 500. You beat the Cowboys. I believe you may have been in first place if you win that game, because the Cowboys were, around 500, kind of digging their own self out of a 3-5 hole at that point in the season. And instead, you miss out. You're swept by the Cowboys this year. So, again, everyone's like, okay, well, that was Philadelphia's shot. Then, they're done. Oh, wait, let's go to Sunday Night Football against the Rams in L.A. and kick their ass. What the hell, man?
That was honestly the shocker of the year. I went into that game just thinking this is going to be one of the last games I'll watch this season. Let's just have a good game, maybe a competitive game. See some of the young guys play. And Nick Foles came back that game. See him play again, and Alshon was honestly the difference in that. No one could stop him. He went off for 160. Yeah, 160 on 8 catches. Caught all 8 targets. Foles was just feeling them all night. And then our unsung hero of the year, for part of the year, Wendell Smallwood. He's been kind of a spellback for our backfield since it's been kind of a rotation and people have been injured in and out. He had 2 touchdowns that game.
Nice. So then you follow that up.
A real difference.
So you come home a week later with the Texans and pull out a last-second victory on that one to give yourselves a chance to play your way in and get some help Week 17 against the Redskins, who are a beaten and broken team at this point. I mean, they started out the year very, very well, but after they lost Alex Smith, it was all downhill from there. So it was just about A, winning the game, and B, trying to get out as healthy as humanly possible, and then get on your knees and pray that the Bears can take care of the Vikings in Minnesota, where we historically do not win a lot of football games. And yet you guys won very easily. We won very easily, set up Sunday's matchup.
And that was honestly the one thing I was nervous about. Was at halftime I was constantly checking Twitter just to see if Nagy was going to pull starters or what was going to happen in the second half. They were just going to kind of lay down. So that had me on the edge of my seat all Sunday.
So it works out because Nagy was more hell-bent on winning and burying the Vikings than he was about resting starters. And we thought there was a little bit of hindsight 2020 when a couple of our receivers, were taken out of the game with some bumps and bruises, but they've all been full participants this week in practice. So it was a no harm, no foul, probably more precautionary matter than anything else, taking them out of the game when they got banged up. But, how is Nick Foles doing? Because he was a casualty of Sunday's game.
Yeah, so he left the game with a chest injury, it was called, and he got x-rays on his ribs, and he is good to go. He practiced today, actually. So.
Okay, well, I think Dr. Mack and Dr. Hicks and Dr. Floyd would like to examine those ribs on Sunday, if that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the cold weather, that's not going to help at all.
Well, it's actually only going to be about 40 degrees outside, so the whole frigid, frozen Soldier Field kind of thing. It's but you guys are a cold weather team anyway, so I wasn't really anticipating it that being that big a deal. However, the fans have been really into the team this year, obviously, and that has been a big difference in those big Sunday night games against the Vikings and the Rams, playing a huge part in it. So that's the part where you guys might have to go up against something. But you guys play at the link, and you're very well versed in rabid fan bases. So it might just be whoever the best team is on Sunday will win, as opposed to a home field advantage or anything like that.
Very true. Very true.
So what can we expect from this Eagles team? I mean, this crazy roller coaster up and down year. Wentz is we start with Foles, we go to Wentz goes down, Foles comes back in, and somehow you guys still manage to kind of forgive the phrase, back your way in to the playoffs when everybody thought you were done 5 weeks ago, but here you are now, ready to represent and defend your world championship.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to expect a very, very feisty Eagles team. I mean, they scratched and clawed their way this entire season through injuries, through everything, through people writing them off. But the one thing I am very nervous about is that Bears defensive line, because our offensive line is played decent this year, but we've had some injuries. Jason Peters' age has been catching up to him, so he has been dealing with some stuff, and he's obviously going to be matched up against Khalil Mack, who I think could absolutely wreck this game.
That's the great thing about him.
Yeah, he's a game wrecker, the definition of one. So I think Dougie P, knowing that, is going to utilize Darren Sproles a lot, because he's quite honestly one of our best pass blockers, and he's going to try to use a quick strike passing attack just to get the ball in Foles' hands, because if Khalil Mack is anywhere near him, he'll be sacked.
Yeah, I mean that's a sound strategy. It has worked against us in the past, but lately, even guys like Akeem Hicks have gotten real good at getting their hands up. And Hicks in the last 2 weeks defended like five passes. He had 3 against San Francisco for sure, and at least 1 against Minnesota this past Sunday. So the defensive linemen are trying to get more involved as far as getting those hands up if they know they're not going to get to the quarterbacks, and that's been working. So that's something that Foles is super tall, so he should be okay with that and getting the ball over the crowd. So you mentioned Darren Sproles, and this is a guy, he didn't start playing until late in the year this year, right?
Very late. So he was he came off he was dealing with a hamstring injury all year. He came back for 1 game and then had to leave because he re-aggravated it. He then started playing, I think, week 13. But ever since he's come back, he's been a huge spark for this team in the passing game, and as I said, the pass blocking game and the run game.
Well, we have our own Darren Sproles. He's basically been called our Darren Sproles since the moment that we drafted him, because Ryan Pace comes from New Orleans. He acquired, or was part of the front office that acquired Darren Sproles from San Diego, and they flourished out there for all of those years that with the drafts and everything that Pace was putting together, especially last year's draft in 2017, the heavily scrutinized draft that it was, even by me, quite honestly. Trubisky was supposed to be his Drew Brees. Cohen was his Darren Sproles, and Adam Shaheen, our big tight end, the second-round pick, was supposed to be our Jimmy Graham, I guess, that tall tight end with that huge catch radius and stuff like that. If that kid can keep himself healthy enough, he might actually be able to live up to that. But Sproles is definitely what Cohen has been, and definitely somebody that your defense is going to have to key on this weekend.
Yeah, he's honestly one of my favorite players to watch.
Absolutely,
every Sunday. I always have the Bears game on to watch him, because he's just a highlight reel.
Yeah, he's been a blast to watch.
And he definitely is going to be a problem for our defense. We have Jordan Hicks, who's been banged up this year. He's had, again, an up-and-down year, as our whole team has. He can cover, but I think Tariq Cohen he's just too quick and too speedy to be covered by anybody, really.
So let's talk about this game and the storylines that are kind of coming out of it. So, of course, you have the familiarity, Nagy and Peterson for years working under Andy Reid, over 5-6 years in Philadelphia, another couple in Kansas City before Peterson goes off to be coach of the Eagles. Then you have the whole brother thing with Chris Long and Kyle Long playing against each other. Kyle gets healthy enough just in time to come back for the playoffs, and while he probably won't be matched up head-to-head with his brother very much, the opportunity for them to play against each other is there. So you also have the whole us against the world kind of thing, because while there are plenty of people who think that the Eagles can do it, there's a lot more who don't think they can against this Bears team on the road at Soldier Field this coming Sunday. So and then of course the Alshon coming back to Chicago and the stupid garbage that was flying out of his mouth the other day about, Chicago was just some place I worked. I love the city of Philadelphia. It's like, oh, come on. No love for Chicago at all, man.
Yeah, that was a low blow. That was a low blow.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just bulletin board stuff, man. You don't need to give this team any more fuel to the fire. There's plenty all on its own, and you're going to do that. Not a very good move on his hand, but all of those storylines, making this intriguing on top of the fact that the Bears are one of the main surprise teams this year. The Eagles are the defending champs. They played their way in. They're on a hot streak and everything. So it's like that alone is what makes this game intriguing. But then you throw in the Nagy Peterson stuff, Chris Long versus Kyle Long, Alshon playing in Chicago again, all that kind of stuff, to where there's going to be a ton of eyes on this thing. And then the NFL made it the main event of the weekend, with it being the late game on Sunday.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is the game planning strategies of Nagy and Peterson, because they both know each other so well that they're going to know exactly what the other person is thinking, what the other person is going to want to do. So I think we're going to see some very, very interesting play calling this game.
Yeah, I mean, if Nagy has done nothing but keep it interesting this year, when you send out a formation on purpose that has 4 defensive linemen in it on offense, and your main receiver on that play is a backup offensive tackle, you're thinking outside the box. So, he's been pretty entertaining to watch. He did it again against Minnesota when we had our backup linebacker score a 2-point conversion out of the backfield. So I
wouldn't be surprised to see it again.
Yeah.
This week.
So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see something like that as well. So, real quick, before we move on any further, what's the story with Carson Wentz? I mean, has he officially been shut down, or what's going on with him? Because it's like his health plus the way Nick Foles has been playing lately has from some people thrown a cloud over the future there in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so the original reports that came out said it was a 3-month recovery, and he hasn't been designated the IR yet. So I think it's kind of more of an emergency situation where we're just going to list him as an inactive for however long we're playing, just in case Nick Foles does go down and we do end up winning. So then we can possibly bring him back, or maybe have him be QB2 for Nate Sudfeld, who would end up being our starter if Nick Foles went down.
And how are people feeling about Nate Sudfeld? God forbid.
So he's a third-year player from the Redskins, and he is a preseason favorite. Everyone loves watching him in the preseason. He actually threw his first touchdown pass last week in his first snap, actually.
Huh. Okay. Well, one of our preseason favorites got a chance to play last week against the Vikings in Javon Wims. And this was a kid, he was our 7th-round pick this year and was all over the place in the preseason. Caught a ton of balls in the Hall of Fame game. When the Bears rested their starters for the dress rehearsal against the Chiefs, Javon Wims was one of the starters. He had a 100-yard day against the starters in Kansas City that day. Caught an amazing touchdown pass and everything like that. And everyone's like, man, this kid is great. Has been inactive for like 13 of the 16 games this year, and got to play last week because Allen Robinson was down. So he was active, caught some important passes, but will most likely be inactive this Sunday against the Eagles. So I know how you're feeling about watching your preseason favorites actually perform during the regular season. Yeah,
it's always nice to see them do good in the regular season.
So we're looking at I'm looking at your running game right now, and you mentioned Smallwood had a decent day against the Rams, and I'm looking at a bunch of names. It's kind of like evenly spread out as far as who's running the football. Is it supposed to be a multi-tiered attack, or did the Jay Ajayi injury kind of set that into motion? Who can we expect to see running the ball on Sunday?
Yeah, it's been a very fluid running back by committee. Basically, the hot hand is the one that gets the ball most of the time, with Sproles being our third down back now, and then Corey Clement was our third down back earlier, but he hit the IR. So I think you're going to see a lot of Josh Adams. He's a rookie out of Notre Dame who came on very strong at the end of the season, and obviously Darren Sproles I think will have a huge part in the game.
Okay, and then looking at your receiving core, I knew that Zach Ertz was doing well this season. I didn't know that he was 50 catches more than the second guy good this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's been having, he's a lock on third down.
All right, so he's the guy, like when the Bears played San Francisco a couple weeks ago, if we wanted to slow the offense down, we need to keep our hands on George Kittle. We're going to need to keep an eye on Zach Ertz, and you say especially on third down?
Yes, especially on third down. And it's weird because he has the same connection with Foles as he did with Wentz.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would explain 116 catches and nearly 1,200 yards receiving. Yep. So, that's 300 yards more than Alshon, who is second on the team, 51 catches more than Alshon, who's second in receptions as well. Now, Alshon missed a couple of games early in the year, right? Was it a shoulder thing that was bugging Alshon?
Yeah, he had a shoulder surgery over the offseason, so he missed the first 4 weeks, I believe.
How you guys liking Alshon? I mean, I know that when he was in Chicago, I loved him. He was a dynamic guy, made a lot of bananas catches like the one that he made in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. He was real good for those, but one of the things that he did that drove Bear fans nuts was he could make those out of, like, how did you do that catches like they were routine and then drop the routine catches.
He's honestly been pretty. So he's played there for a year or 2 years now.
Uh-huh.
And he's been very consistent. I would say he's probably the fan favorite out of the wide receivers.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't sound crazy to me. It's just that, he was a fan favorite here in Chicago, but he had a reputation for being able to make those bananas catches where he's jumping over somebody. He's keeping his feet in bounds. Somehow he came down with that one. Cutler threw up a 50-50 ball and Alshon came down with it. But if, he runs a simple hitch route and shows his hands to the quarterback would drill him right between the numbers with the football and he would drop it. There was a touchdown against the Lions that would have won us the game, wide open down the middle of the field. He drops the football. Those are the kind of things that drove Bear fans nuts. He would make the crazy catches look routine and make the routine catches look crazy somehow. So that was one of the things that frustrated us about Alshon when he was here. That and the fact that the last 2 years that he was here, he was either injured or suspended in Chicago. So,
yeah.
It was quite a tumultuous ending, and I don't think Ryan Pace was a fan, so maybe that's where some of that animosity came from when he was talking to the press the other day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the fan favoritism for him was he played last season the entire year with a torn rotator cuff. So he really stuck it out for the team, and Philly fans absolutely love that.
Sure.
And
sure.
I've been looking at his catch percentage this year. He has 70% catch percentage, so that's the best of his career.
Okay. Well, that works.
So yeah, that hasn't really been. Yeah, I haven't really heard much about people being overly upset about him dropping routine balls like that.
Yeah, it must have just been a Chicago thing.
Hopefully it's fixed, but who knows?
Right. But, I mean, granted, in his defense, didn't have the world's greatest quarterbacks throwing him passes while he was in Chicago. So, I mean, I was hoping the Bears might be able to bring him back for one more year to see, because when we lost him, we had no receivers last year, not one against, last season, which is why I was heavily against the Bears drafting a quarterback, not Trubisky, not a quarterback, period. We didn't have the team to support a young quarterback. So when we didn't bring Alshon back, the last thing I wanted was for us to draft a quarterback, and that's, of course, the first thing that we did. And we had no receivers.
Kind of like
yeah. So
kind of like the Jets this year.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so we'll see what they do in the offseason because they got like $2 billion in cap space. So we'll see what they can do to help out Sam Darnold there. But, so I'm intrigued about this game on Sunday to see how much the storylines factor into the game itself. Will Alshon, will he taunt the crowd if he does something? Because he can be that guy, he likes to be showy when he does well and things like that. So I wonder if he's going to taunt the crowd if he makes a good catch or a touchdown pass or anything like that. And, the fans are going to take that personally, the stuff that he said, even though he actually did take some of it back later on. I don't think anybody knows that he actually took some of it back. Like, he loved the city of Chicago and stuff like that. Everybody's just going to remember that stuff he said to the press during his little scrum in the locker room. That's what they're going to remember on Sunday, not that he took some of it back or, that he apologized for some of the things he said. But, can Foles, will his ribs play any factor into him getting rid of the ball on Sunday? I think it could. I think it could, definitely. You think so?
Yeah. With going with such a quick passing attack, I think we're going to try to get the ball to Golden Tate, who hasn't really been too much of a factor this year. Nothing Aguilar. And I think if he takes one big shot from Eddie Golden or Keem Hicks or obviously Khalil Mack, that could kind of throw him off his rhythm.
Sure. I mean, especially if it's your ribs, man. I mean, that's a tough injury to play through. Yeah. Because everything hurts when your ribs hurt. It's amazing. I mean,
especially throwing the ball, your motion completely changed when that area is just.
And what side is it on? Is it on his throwing side or his left side?
It's on the throwing side.
It is on the oh man. So that's tough, so breathing hurts, you can't sleep well, that kind of thing. When your ribs are ailing you, it pretty much incapacitates you. So the fact that he's playing through it speaks a lot about him and his desire to help the team win. But it could also be his Achilles heel on Sunday if he does in fact take a shot at some point. Just the overall desire not to feel that pain anymore. Not that he's afraid to get hit, but not to hurt like that may factor into him making an errant throw or, throwing it a step too soon or anything like that. So that's something that we'd have to keep our eyes on if, in fact, the Bears can get to him.
Definitely.
So you're an Eagles fan. How does the game unfold, or what needs to happen on Sunday for the Eagles to be able to earn a trip to New Orleans for a rematch with the Saints?
I think, like last year, our defensive line is going to have to be the catalyst that makes this team go. Michael Bennett has been on a tear of late. Ever since Derek Barnett went down, he got the starting job. Him, Fletcher Cox, have been getting to the quarterback nonstop. And Jim Schwartz, he hasn't blitzed all season. Past 2 games, thrown in a couple of blitzes once in a while, which has been a good sight to see, getting to the quarterback like that. So I think that's going to be the key to success, is getting Trubisky kind of off his game, letting their offense kind of stall, and then having Nick Foles kind of methodically manage the game.
How many sacks do you guys end up with? Because I'm seeing Chris Long had 6.5, and Michael Bennett finished with 9. Graham had 4, Cox with 10.5. I mean, how did you guys round out for the year?
We finished with,
because the Bears, with I think the 2 or 3 that we had against Minnesota, rounded out at a good round number of 50 for the year.
Yeah, we were up 44.
44. Okay, so you guys are up there.
Yeah, I think that's honestly going to be the most fun thing to watch, is those 2 defensive lines go at it with the opposing offensive lines.
How are you guys against the run this year?
We're good. We're stout against the run, like last year. Fletcher Cox has been having another Pro Bowl type season. He's constantly getting through double teams and just making tackles for losses all over the place. He had 3 sacks against the Redskins. So yeah, he's been.
Well, one of the things that's intriguing about Cox, or why he's held in such high regard, is like Aaron Donald. He's an interior defensive lineman, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. He plays D tackle.
So I mean, he's Aaron Donald somehow ended up with nearly 21 sacks this year, which is bananas for an inside defensive lineman. But I mean, like,
yeah, he was 2 off, right? 2 off the lead.
Yeah,
or the record.
Yeah, he was 2 off.
That's incredible.
So, but the one thing that I like to say is that it's the Bears that contributed to that, because he didn't touch Trubisky in that game against the Bears. We handled Aaron Donald in that one. So I think it was because of us that he didn't get that record. So or at least that's what I like to believe anyway.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You know, it's like, but 10.5 sacks for an interior lineman is nothing to sneeze at, as well, especially since it led the team.
Mm-hmm. And his running mate, Timmy Jernigan, he was out for a majority of the season as well. So he's been back, and he's been getting a lot of double teams himself, which leads Fletcher one-on-one with a lot of guards, and he wins that matchup, I would say, like 75% of the time.
All right, so there you have it. The matchup in the trenches, that's what's going to win the game. Whoever controls the line of scrimmage will probably come out ahead on Sunday.
I think so.
All right, so you got a score prediction? Do you like to do that, or do you just stay like I'm picking the Eagles to win and that's my story and I'm sticking to it, or do you like to throw? I mean, we are sponsored by a betting company, after all. So, do you know what the line?
Yeah,
I think
the line is
5.5.
The biggest one of the. I think went up to 6. The biggest one of the of wild card weekend.
Yeah.
Eagles +6. I think I would take Eagles +6, but I do think they're going to lose this one. It's going to be an absolute slugfest, I think.
Yeah.
Just a defensive battle. Everyone getting in each other's faces. I think the Bears are going to sneak it out, win 17-13.
17-13. Okay. Yeah, I think it'll probably be something in that realm. Number one, because the Bears have played an exciting game just about every single week of the year. I mean, we had a couple of blowout victories, that one against Tampa where Trubisky went off for 6 touchdown passes. We had an easy Sunday against the Bills, surprise, surprise, a couple of weeks after that. But for the most part, it's a lot of one-score games. Even in the games that we lost, I think in our 4 losses, you combine for like 12 points or 13 points or something being the difference in those 4 losses for the Bears. So, I mean, it's been interesting being a Bear fan this year, with pretty much every game coming down to the wire, regardless of who we are playing with. If even in our dominant games, the scores have been close. I mean, even though we pulverized the Rams, it was 15-6, so they were always in the game. Same thing with the Vikings, 25-20, their first game on Sunday Night Football. Not the biggest margins of victories, even though the Bears were definitely the more dominant team.
Yeah, and I would say the exact same thing with the Eagles, besides the 2 games against the Redskins this year.
Sure. And, it's this coming Sunday. It's going to be fun. I absolutely think it's going to be a lot of fun. Weather isn't going to be a factor, so it's just going to be a matter of who can strap them up and get it done on Sunday between the 2 teams. So, Matt, I appreciate you coming on to the show. We play the NFC East next year. So I look forward to having you back when we get around to that.
Of course, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Lucci, MatthewLucci_, and then on Instagram, same thing, Matthew Lucci.
All right. And he's from the Armchair Bird Gang, one of my fellow Armchair brethren. Matt, thanks for being on the show. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks again.
Once again, want to thank Matt for being on the show and helping us get through that preview. Bears and Eagles, and really interested to see how this game is going to turn out on Sunday. The Bears. The one great thing, and I've been talking to a bunch of my friends this week about this, and the thing that feels so different about this team, and maybe I've mentioned this to you guys earlier this week, but I don't think I mentioned it this way, is that in the past, that there has been a sense of doubt, a sense of dread, just because in the past the Bears have always struggled when the stage got big. Whether it be, Sunday night games or Thursday nighters against the Packers, always coming up short in those games. When it came to playing somebody that we had to be better than if we wanted to advance, or to prove that we were legit, the Bears would always come up short in those games more times than not. And just about every single time this year, when the Bears have come into a game where they have had to answer the call, they've met it more than they haven't this year. And as a matter of fact, ever since losing that game to the Patriots, they have met it every single time. They had that Sunday night game against Minnesota, the Sunday night game against the Rams, having to put away the Packers at home, coming up, against that scrappy 49er team. And then this past Sunday, when they basically had nothing to play for, it was about keeping Minnesota out. It was about maintaining dominance in the division. The Bears answered the call in a place where they do not have much success, almost none, as a matter of fact. They have answered the call, and that's why I'm not as nervous going into this game as I would have been, in the past. Even with those good lovey teams that we had back in the day, the Bears always found a way to come up short when the stage got big. I mean, hell, the playoff appearance in 2010, we had a chance to keep Green Bay out. If we win Week 17 in Green Bay, we send the Packers home, and I forget who would have gotten in instead of them, but instead the Packers play their way in. An awesome game. Don't let the 10-3 score fool you. It was a fantastic football game. It was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of defense, especially if you're a big fan of that. But we don't keep the Packers out. They play their way in. They end up beating the Bears in Soldier Field in the NFC Championship game and going to the Super Bowl and winning it. The Bears could have prevented that, and they didn't, and coming up short against Green Bay in the NFC title game. That's another example there. But there have been several instances over the years, Sunday night against the Texans back in 2012 when they're both 7-1, making the argument for who is the best team in football. The Bears come up short that day. The 2013 week 17, Green Bay in Chicago for the division, we come up short. It just seemed like whenever the stage got big, the Bears got small, and that hasn't happened to us this year. We weren't able to beat Brady and the Patriots in Chicago. That's our only home loss of the season. We haven't lost since, and we also haven't come up short when the stage called for us to come up big. The Bears came up big in those games. They came away with victories, and that's why I don't have that sense of dread or doubt. I am supremely confident that the Bears will win on Sunday. Supremely. I have no doubt whatsoever the Bears will win the game. Can they lose? Absolutely. The Philadelphia Eagles are a good football team. They're riding high, so on and so forth. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. But smart money is on the Bears. Smart money is on the Bears. If you're betting on Philadelphia, you're betting with emotion. You just heard Matt himself, the diehard, lifelong Eagle fan, pick against his team because that's the right pick. You pick the Bears to win this game. They are the better team. They're playing at home. It's going to run out for the Eagles at some point, or so, we Bear fans want to believe. But I don't think anybody is going into this game with any kind of sense of dread or doubt that they would have in years past. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm not losing any sleep whatsoever about the Bears playing the Eagles on Sunday. I'm not going to lose any sleep next week when we play the Rams on Saturday. We're going to kick the holy crap out of the Rams if we go to – and even though we're playing on the road, I am supremely confident the Bears will win that game. I might lose a little sleep if we have to go to New Orleans and play the Saints, but hopefully the Cowboys or the Seahawks take care of that for us. We can play that game in Soldier Field. So we'll have to wait and see. That's the one place I don't want to go. I don't want to go to New Orleans. I'll play the Saints all day in Soldier Field, but that's not going to happen. So we got to go to the Superdome. I'd rather not. So that's the only one. I might lose a wink or two that week, but I know that my Bears are an awesome squad this year. They are legit, 100% legit, which is why nobody can really count them out. And, what I said earlier about Mitch being the quote-unquote weak link, it's a legitimate concern, but, we're not losing games because of him. We're just not winning. We're not winning games because of him, but we're not losing games because of him either. He basically is a game manager. That's the progress that he's made this year. We have seen a lot of growth out of Mitch this season. Even though his stats have been up and down, his progress has been steady. The mistakes that he made this week, he didn't make them again the week after. You know, that disastrous night that he had against the Rams, the defense was able to carry him that week, and he came back. I don't think he's thrown an interception since that game. So progress, growth, and like I said, I've been saying it all year long, but really looking forward to 2019 when it comes to Mitch Trubisky and what kind of progress he can make with a full offseason, with the system, a full offseason with Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel and Anthony Miller and all that kind of stuff, going through OTAs and everything. Really should see some substantial growth in year 3 for Trubisky, in year 2 of the Matt Nagy system with all those same players and such. So, like I said, I'm supremely confident the Bears can and will win on Sunday against the Eagles, and I'll feel the exact same way when we head out to Los Angeles, because if we win, we're going to L.A. That's the only way it's going down. And if Philly wins, the lowest seed goes to the highest seed for the number 1 seed. So Philly's 6, they're the last team in. If they win, they go to number 1. They have a rematch in New Orleans with the Saints, where they lost 48-7 earlier this year. I don't know how that would go for them, but if the Bears win, the number 2 seed hosts the highest available seed. They don't get any higher than the Bears as far as teams not on the bye. The Bears are number 3. We go to Los Angeles no matter what. That's the path. If we win at home, we're going to L.A. So we'll see how it all bangs out. But what I mentioned before and what I want to touch on again just before we get out of here is the thing about our offense this year. Like I said, we paid Allen Robinson all that money to come in and be our number 1 receiver, and I think he's 2nd or 3rd on the team as far as catches this year. Only had about 700 yards or so in catches this season. And granted, he missed a couple of games, I think 3 or 4 games this year, but we haven't needed Allen Robinson to be that go-to guy. The great thing about this offense and all the guys that we did go and sign, Trey Burton, Taylor Gabriel, drafting Anthony Miller, having Shaheen come back and everything, it has been we can spread the football around, and not to mention we got Tariq Cohen coming out of the backfield from time to time, Taquan Mizzell. We've been utilizing all of our parts, all of our tools, all of our weapons. And that's why, you can't, like with the Eagles, I'm fairly certain, I mean, they've got 2 weapons that we want to keep our eyes on, Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey. We need to bottle up Ertz. We basically need to shut him down. Or actually, I think Alshon's the one we need to shut down. Ertz is the one that we need to contain, especially on 3rd down, as Matt said. So, I mean, that's what we want to do there. With the Bears, if you shut down Anthony Miller, that's going to open things up for Trey Burton and Taylor Gabriel So I mean, shut down Robinson. You got 3 other guys that Mitch likes to throw the football to on the regular. So it wouldn't be like the old Bears, where if you take Brandon Marshall out of the game, maybe you go to Alshon Jeffrey, or a couple years ago when you shut down Alshon Jeffrey. Maybe we can get it to Martellus. I don't know. You've taken a pretty big chunk out of our offense if you shut down this one guy. With our offense, we're able to spread the football around. Tariq Cohen come out of the backfield. If you shut him down, then you've got to worry about Trey Burton in our wide receiver core. If you shut down Trey Burton, somebody's got to watch Tariq Cohen. I mean, it's a great offense to have. It's a nice problem to have that. It's not like that first year that we had Brandon Marshall in 2012, where he had 123 catches and the next guy, or like 112, and the next guy below him had 39 or something like that. There's no mystery as to where Jay Cutler was going with the ball back in the day. So that's the one great thing about our offense. Not to mention, Jordan Howard is running the football very, very well. Nearly 400 yards over the last 4 games, a handful of touchdowns, hitting his stride, and was named, I forgot to mention, the FedEx Ground Player of the Week for his 109-yard performance against the Vikings on Sunday. So 21 carries, 109 yards, just that 5 yards a carry for the game. 5.2, I think, was the number. 2 touchdowns. as well. What a way to cap off Week 17. What a way to cap off the regular season to have Jordan Howard basically play his best game of the year. So, I mean, Jordan Howard's hitting his stride. Tariq Cohen is, a danger no matter what he's doing, catching, running the football, returning kicks. Got to watch out for him. And our receiving core is all going to be 100% for the game, or as close to as they can be at this point in the year. Oh, yeah, and we also have the best defense in the NFL. Number one against the run, thanks to our performance against the Vikings this past Sunday. Most turnovers in the league, or more takeaways, I guess you could say. I think we took third in sacks with 50 this year. Yeah, we got a future Hall of Famer in Khalil Mack and a couple of perennial All-Pros in Trevathan and Akeem Hicks, Roquan Smith. Our cornerbacks are awesome, and we just might be getting the best safety in football back on Sunday as well if Eddie Jackson plays for us. So it's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone the Philadelphia Eagles who, if you forgive the phrase, had to back their way in to the playoffs this week. They had to win and get help. We provided that help, and now it's time for us to send them back. And it's somebody else's turn. Let's just say that. So that is going to do it for the wild card preview. I look forward to talking to you guys on Monday. And fingers crossed, just because I'm a superstitious guy, it will be a Victory Monday and not the precursor to the 2018 year in review episode. So here's to our beloved staying healthy, getting a good win against the Eagles, and then getting ready for the Rams in the divisional round next Saturday. So come on back Monday for what I'm sure will be a wild card victory episode. Until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been the Bears Talk Underground.